On what seemed like an ordinary flight, an extraordinary moment unfolded, one that would resonate far beyond the airplane cabin. Mrs. Clara Williams, an elderly African-American woman with a warm smile and tired eyes, boarded a plane for her first journey in decades. Excited to visit her granddaughter studying abroad, she carried with her a small embroidered scarf, a gift she had painstakingly crafted to symbolize love and perseverance. Yet, the warm excitement Clara felt quickly faded as she encountered cold indifference and subtle disdain from the very people who were supposed to ensure her comfort. Among the passengers and crew, Clara's struggles went unnoticed, or worse, ignored. When Clara needed assistance placing her modest suitcase in the overhead compartment, a flight attendant, Laura Miller, barely offered her a glance before moving on. The whispers of impatient passengers only added to Clara's discomfort. "Can't she move faster?" someone murmured. Their words cut deep, but Clara said nothing, choosing instead to focus on her purpose for traveling, her beloved granddaughter, waiting on the other side of the journey. However, one passenger, Emma Lynn, noticed Clara's distress. With quiet compassion, Emma stepped forward, offering a helping hand and a warm smile. This small act of kindness broke through Clara's isolation, bringing comfort amidst the cold atmosphere. What neither Clara nor Emma realized in that moment was that this simple gesture would become the spark for a much larger movement, one that would ripple across communities and touch hearts around the world. Clara Williams was more than just a passenger on that flight. She was a testament to resilience, a woman who had lived through decades of hardship and sacrifice, raising a son on her own and instilling in him the values of kindness and perseverance. Her journey that day was not just about reuniting with family. It became a symbol of the transformative power of compassion in the face of indifference. This story is not merely about Clara's struggles. It is about the profound impact of a single act of kindness. Emma Lynn's decision to step forward may have seemed small at the time, but it planted the seed for a global reckoning, reminding us all that even the smallest gestures can lead to monumental change. As we dive deeper into Clara's story, we'll uncover the powerful lessons her journey offers. Her life reminds us that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can inspire a collective awakening. In a world where indifference often feels overwhelming, her story is a call to action, to see, to care, and to act. Clara Williams was no stranger to challenges, but she faced them with a quiet determination that defined her life. Born in Montgomery, Alabama, Clara grew up during a time when opportunities for Black women were scarce, and prejudice dictated every aspect of life. Yet she refused to let those constraints dictate her future. Clara became a teacher, a beacon of hope for children in her community. Her classroom wasn't just a place of learning, it was a sanctuary where young minds were nurtured and dreams were encouraged, despite the odds stacked against them. In the faded photograph that hung in her modest living room, Clara stood in front of a chalkboard, her youthful eyes filled with determination. Behind her were rows of children, their faces bright with hope, a hope she had ignited. Teaching wasn't just a job for Clara, it was a mission. She believed that education was the most powerful tool to break cycles of poverty and inequality. But life tested Clara in ways she could never have anticipated. When her husband passed away unexpectedly in a tragic accident at the steel mill, Clara was left to raise their young son Marcus alone. The grief was heavy, but her resolve was stronger. She took on extra jobs, sewing and cleaning for wealthier families in the evenings to make ends meet. Her hands, once used for gentle chalkboard writing, became calloused from endless work. Despite the long hours and sleepless nights, she never let her struggles show in front of Marcus. Clara instilled in Marcus the values that guided her life: hard work, resilience, and kindness. She often told him, "Even when the world is unfair, you can choose to be good. Never let bitterness take away your kindness." These lessons, spoken during moments of quiet between them, became the foundation of Marcus's character. One poignant memory remained vivid in Marcus's mind, even as he grew older. On the day of his high school graduation, Clara arrived, wearing a dress she had meticulously repurposed from old fabric. The pride in her eyes as she watched Marcus receive his diploma was unmatched. It wasn't just his achievement. It was hers as well. Her sacrifices had paved the way for him to succeed. Years later, when Marcus graduated from college and became a successful entrepreneur, he often reflected on his mother's unwavering strength. Clara had given up her dreams so that he could chase his own. Her pride wasn't in her possessions, but in the man her son had become. Despite her sacrifices, Clara never lost her sense of compassion. She remained deeply involved in her community, helping neighbors and volunteering at the local church. She had a unique way of seeing people, even when the world seemed to overlook them. A kind word can be a lifeline, she would often say, reminding those around her that small acts of kindness could ripple outward in unimaginable ways. As the years passed, Clara's world grew smaller. Her health began to decline, and she spent most of her days in the home where she had raised Marcus. The house, filled with memories of laughter and struggle, became her sanctuary. It was here that she embroidered the silk scarf she planned to give to her granddaughter, Lily. Each stitch told a story of her life: the Alabama wildflowers she once played among, the river that had been her solace, and the unyielding love she carried for her family. Clara rarely asked for anything for herself. Her greatest joy came from seeing Marcus thrive and from watching Lily grow into a bright, ambitious young woman. When Lily moved to Paris for her studies, Clara was hesitant to travel such a long distance, worried she might be a burden. But the thought of seeing her granddaughter again and delivering the scarf she had so lovingly crafted gave her the courage to face her fears. Clara's life was a testament to the power of quiet strength and enduring love. She had spent decades teaching others, both in the classroom and through her own example, that resilience paired with kindness could overcome even the harshest circumstances. As Clara prepared for her journey to Paris, she reflected on her life with a sense of gratitude. Though she had faced more than her share of hardships, she had also witnessed the transformative power of love and education. Her sacrifices had borne fruit, and her legacy was alive in Marcus and Lily. Clara's story wasn't just about endurance, it was about the impact one life could have on so many others. Her journey would become another chapter in a life filled with courage, compassion, and hope. A story that would inspire countless others to believe in the power of sacrifice and the beauty of kindness. The morning of her flight to Paris, Clara Williams felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It had been decades since she last traveled far from her small Alabama home, and navigating the bustling airport alone was daunting. But the thought of reuniting with her granddaughter, Lily, after years apart, filled her with hope and determination. Clutching her worn suitcase and a handbag containing the embroidered silk scarf she had made for Lily, Clara braved the unfamiliar environment of flashing departure boards, hurried announcements, and throngs of travelers. When she finally boarded the plane, Clara was greeted by the sound of hurried footsteps and murmured conversations. The cabin felt like another world, with sleek seats and cold metallic fixtures. She hesitated at the doorway, unsure where to go next. A young flight attendant, Laura Miller, approached, her smile stiff and her eyes scanning Clara in a cursory manner. "Hello, ma'am. Can I help you with something?" Laura's voice was polite but devoid of warmth. Clara gave a small, hesitant nod. "I need to stow my bag," she said softly, glancing at the overhead compartment which was far beyond her reach. Laura sighed, her tone clipped as she replied, "You'll need to wait until someone can assist you. Please step aside so other passengers can board." Without a second glance, Laura moved on to greet other passengers, leaving Clara standing awkwardly in the aisle, unsure of what to do next. Clara gripped her suitcase tightly, her hands trembling with the effort of lifting it. She tried to raise it toward the compartment, but her frail arms couldn't manage the weight. The bag slipped from her grasp, landing with a loud thud on the floor. The noise drew the attention of several passengers. Some stared with mild irritation, others with thinly veiled impatience. A voice behind her muttered, "Can't she move any faster?" Another added with a chuckle, "They should really let old people board last." The words stung, but Clara bit her lip and said nothing. She bent to pick up her suitcase, but her body felt heavier with every whispered remark. Before she could try again, a voice spoke from behind her. "Here, let me help." Clara turned to see a young woman with long black hair and kind eyes stepping forward. The woman, who later introduced herself as Emma Lynn, smiled reassuringly as she effortlessly lifted Clara's bag into the overhead compartment. "It's no trouble at all," Emma said, her tone warm and genuine. "Let's get you settled in your seat." Clara managed a faint smile, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Thank you, dear. That's very kind of you." The contrast between Emma's kindness and Laura's cold indifference was stark. While Laura had seen Clara as an inconvenience, Emma saw her as a person who needed compassion. It was a small act, helping with the suitcase, but to Clara, it meant the world. As Clara took her seat by the window, she clutched her handbag tightly, feeling both grateful and overwhelmed. The murmurs of impatience around her didn't stop, but Emma's kindness had given her a small shield against the invisible weight of judgment. The flight attendant Laura, meanwhile, continued her duties with mechanical precision, her demeanor polished but detached. As she moved through the cabin, offering assistance to other passengers, she avoided Clara's gaze entirely. Midway through the flight, Clara pressed the call button above her seat. Her throat felt parched from the dry cabin air, and she hoped to get a glass of water. A few minutes later, Laura appeared, her expression impatient. "Yes?" Laura asked curtly, her arms crossed. Clara hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Could I have a glass of water, please?" Laura nodded tersely. "I'll get to it when I can," she said, turning away without another word. Minutes passed, and the water never came. Clara sat silently, too timid to press the button again. It wasn't until Emma noticed Clara's discomfort that action was taken. Rising from her seat, Emma approached another flight attendant and calmly explained the situation. Within moments, Clara had her water, delivered with an apology from the other attendant. Emma returned to her seat, leaning over to check on Clara. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Clara nodded, her voice soft. "You've done so much already. I don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother at all," Emma replied firmly. "Everyone deserves kindness, especially you." Emma's words touched Clara deeply. She hadn't expected anyone to take notice of her struggles, let alone extend a hand of friendship. As the flight progressed, Emma stayed by Clara's side, chatting with her about Lily and the scarf she had made. Clara's face lit up as she shared stories of her granddaughter and her hopes for the future. For a brief time, the weight of the earlier indignities seemed to lift, but not everyone in the cabin was as compassionate as Emma. Laura's indifferent attitude persisted, and some passengers continued to cast judgmental glances at Clara. When Emma overheard one passenger mutter, "She shouldn't be traveling alone," she turned around sharply. "She has every right to be here," Emma said, her voice calm but resolute, "and she's doing just fine." Her words carried an unexpected power, silencing the murmurs and shifting the atmosphere in the cabin. Other passengers began to take notice, some offering smiles of support to Clara. By the end of the flight, Clara's spirits had lifted, thanks in large part to Emma's kindness and courage. As the plane descended, Clara turned to Emma, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," Clara said. "You didn't have to help me, but you did. You reminded me that there's still goodness in the world." Emma smiled, reaching out to clasp Clara's hand. "You've done the same for me. Meeting you has been a gift." Though Clara's journey began with struggle and neglect, it ended with a renewed sense of hope. Emma's small acts of kindness had transformed an otherwise painful experience into one of connection and compassion. Unbeknownst to Clara and Emma, their story was far from over. What began as a single gesture on a flight would soon spark a global movement, inspiring countless others to see the transformative power of kindness. Anthony Williams sat at his desk, engrossed in a flurry of emails, when his assistant knocked urgently on the door. Startled by the unusual interruption, he looked up. "Come in," he said, sensing something was wrong. He went to the kitchenette and sat down. The assistant entered, her face pale. "Mr. Williams, you need to see this," she said, placing a tablet on his desk. Anthony glanced at the screen, where a video was paused. The headline read, "Elderly woman ignored by flight crew. Shocking treatment sparks outrage." His brow furrowed as he tapped play. The video began with Clara, his mother, struggling to place her suitcase in the overhead compartment. He watched, his stomach sinking, as she was ignored by the flight attendant, Laura Miller. The murmurs of passengers criticizing Clara for being slow filled the audio, their words cutting through Anthony like knives. Then came Emma Lynn, stepping forward to help his mother, offering kindness where the airline had failed. As the video played, Anthony's emotions shifted from disbelief to anger and finally to heartbreak. Seeing his mother, a woman who had endured a lifetime of hardship and had given everything to ensure his success, treated with such disrespect, was unbearable. "How could this happen?" Anthony demanded, his voice trembling with barely controlled fury. His assistant shook her head. "The video has gone viral. Thousands of people are already commenting. Many are calling for accountability, and your mother's story is resonating with them." Anthony's heart sank further. Clara had always been a private person, someone who faced life's challenges quietly and without complaint. To see her pain displayed so publicly made his guilt swell. Anthony tried his hardest to console her, but it truly wasn't enough, for his work suffered. "I need to see her," Anthony said, rising from his chair. When Anthony arrived at Clara's home, she was sitting in her favorite armchair, the silk scarf for Lily draped across her lap. She looked up as he entered, her face lighting up with a faint smile. "Anthony, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Mom, I saw the video. I saw what they did to you." Clara sighed, her expression gentle but tired. "It's all right, Anthony. These things happen. There's no need to make a fuss." "No, Mom," Anthony said, his voice firm. "It's not all right. You deserve respect. Everyone deserves respect. What happened to you was wrong, and I'm going to make sure it never happens again." I asked her to marry me that night. The next morning, Anthony called a press conference. Standing at a podium, with Clara seated behind him, he faced a crowd of reporters and cameras. His expression was resolute, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Yesterday, I watched a video of my mother, Clara Williams, being treated with indifference and disrespect on a flight," Anthony began. "As her son, I am heartbroken. As a leader in this industry, I am ashamed." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The crowd was silent, their attention fixed on him. "My mother is an extraordinary woman. She raised me as a single parent, working tirelessly to give me the opportunities I needed to succeed. She has always taught me the importance of kindness, resilience, and standing up for what is right. Yet, despite all her sacrifices, she was treated as though she didn't matter. This is unacceptable." Anthony took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping the room. "I want to publicly apologize to my mother and to everyone who has ever faced similar treatment. No one should ever feel invisible or dismissed. Today, I promise to make things right." He then announced the creation of the Alma Foundation, named in honor of his mother. "This foundation will be dedicated to promoting kindness, equity, and dignity for all," Anthony explained. "It will focus on 3 key areas: improving the treatment of elderly and vulnerable individuals in public spaces, fostering cultural understanding and respect, and addressing systemic discrimination in all its forms." He also pointed The press conference was met with widespread acclaim. Clips of Anthony's speech quickly spread across social media, drawing praise from activists, organizations, and everyday people. His vulnerability and determination struck a chord, sparking conversations about how society treats its most vulnerable members. The Alma Foundation launched its first initiatives within weeks. One of its primary goals was to reform the airline industry. Partnering with other organizations, the foundation developed training programs for airline staff, emphasizing empathy, cultural sensitivity, and customer care. Airlines across the country began adopting these programs, recognizing the need for change. Beyond the airline industry, the foundation expanded its efforts to include educational campaigns in schools and workplaces. Workshops and seminars were held to address implicit bias and promote inclusivity. Anthony often attended these events, sharing his mother's story to inspire others to take action. One of the foundation's most impactful programs was the Kindness Network, a platform that encouraged people to share their acts of kindness and nominate others who embodied compassion. Stories poured in from around the world, from small towns to bustling cities, creating a wave of positivity and connection. Meanwhile, Clara's story continued to resonate. People from all walks of life reached out to the foundation, sharing how her resilience and Emma's kindness had inspired them. As the Alma Foundation grew, Anthony remained deeply involved, driven by his promise to his mother. He often visited her, updating her on the foundation's progress. Clara, though humble as ever, was proud. "You've turned something painful into something meaningful," she told him one afternoon. "That's all I've ever wanted, for the world to be a little kinder." Anthony nodded, his resolve strengthening. "It's because of you, Mom. Everything I do. It's because of what you taught me." The movement sparked by Clara's story didn't stop at the foundation's work. It inspired broader societal change. Companies began implementing policies to ensure respectful treatment of employees and customers alike. Schools integrated lessons on kindness and empathy into their curriculums. Community groups organized events to promote inclusivity and support for vulnerable populations. Clara's journey on that flight became a symbol, a reminder that small acts of kindness could ripple outward, creating waves of transformation. As Anthony looked at the growing impact of the Alma Foundation, he often thought of his mother sitting in her quiet home, embroidering a scarf filled with love and hope. Her life, marked by resilience and compassion, had become the catalyst for a movement that was changing the world. And through it all, Anthony knew that his promise to his mother to honor her legacy and fight for justice was being fulfilled, one act of kindness at a time. Clara Williams's story resonated far beyond the confines of a single flight or a viral video. What began as a moment of indifference on an airplane grew into a global movement of compassion, inspiring people to reflect on their own actions and strive for a kinder world. Her quiet resilience and the kindness of a stranger, Emma Lynn, became the foundation for a message that transcended borders, cultures, and industries. In a small town in Texas, a high school teacher named Sarah Lopez watched the video of Clara's flight with her students during a lesson on empathy. Afterward, one student raised their hand, their voice trembling. "My grandma doesn't travel because she's scared people will treat her like that," the student shared, "but I think we can change that." Inspired by Clara's story, the class organized a project called Bridging Generations, pairing students with local seniors to share experiences and provide assistance. What started as a school project quickly grew into a community initiative, fostering bonds across generations and teaching the students the value of kindness and respect. Meanwhile, in Berlin, a young doctor named Klaus Weiss found himself reflecting on the way he treated his elderly patients. Clara's story reminded him of a patient he had rushed through an appointment without truly listening to her concerns. Motivated by Clara's resilience, he implemented a new practice in his clinic, dedicating additional time to elderly patients and training his staff to treat every visitor with dignity. "I didn't realize how much of a difference it could make," Klaus said in an interview. "Clara's story showed me that even small changes can have a profound impact." In Sao Paulo, a single mother named Daniela Santos shared her own story of resilience online, crediting Clara's example for giving her the courage to speak out. Her post quickly went viral, inspiring a wave of testimonials from others who had endured hardships but found strength in Clara's legacy. "I felt invisible for so long," Daniela wrote, "but Clara's story reminded me that my voice matters and my story can inspire others." The aviation industry was one of the first to feel the ripple effects of Clara's story. Anthony Williams's Alma Foundation spearheaded reforms, working with airlines worldwide to implement comprehensive training programs for flight attendants and ground staff. These programs emphasized empathy, cultural sensitivity, and the importance of treating every passenger with respect, regardless of age, race, or background. Airline companies began introducing policies to prioritize the needs of elderly and vulnerable passengers. New initiatives included pre-boarding services, designated assistant staff, and mandatory training modules on compassion and customer care. Several airlines even named their programs after Clara, calling them the Clara Initiatives as a tribute to her legacy. One airline executive remarked, "Clara's story taught us that customer service is not just about efficiency, it's about humanity. We're committed to making sure no one feels overlooked or disrespected in our care." Beyond aviation, Clara's story ignited conversations about discrimination and bias in other sectors. Corporations, educational institutions, and governments began implementing measures to address systemic issues and foster inclusivity. For example, in London, a major corporation introduced mandatory diversity and empathy training for its employees. At the announcement, the CEO referenced Clara's story, saying, "Her experience is a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a workplace and a world where everyone feels valued." Social worldwide also took note. Clara's resilience and Emma Lynn's kindness became central case studies and lessons on ethics, empathy, and social responsibility. In classrooms from New York to Nairobi, students analyzed the story, discussing how they could apply its lessons in their own lives. The Alma Foundation launched a media campaign called Be Like Clara to spread awareness and encourage everyday acts of kindness. The campaign featured short videos recounting Clara's story, paired with calls to action like helping a neighbor, showing patience with strangers, or simply offering a smile. Within weeks, the campaign went viral, with millions of people sharing their stories under the hashtag #BeLikeClara. Social media platforms were flooded with posts from individuals performing acts of kindness. A man in Tokyo shared a photo of himself helping an elderly woman carry her groceries. A video of her teaching her grandmother how to use a smartphone. She posted a video of her teaching her grandmother how to use a smartphone. A community group in Cape Town shared their initiative to repaint a neglected senior center. The hashtag united people across the globe, creating a virtual tapestry of kindness inspired by Clara's legacy. The Alma Foundation's educational initiatives also gained momentum. Partnering with schools, the foundation introduced programs focused on teaching empathy, combating discrimination, and celebrating diversity. In Chicago, one high school implemented a month-long curriculum called Lessons from Clara, where students explored themes of resilience and compassion. The program culminated in a student-led project to document and share stories of local community members who embodied Clara's values. One student reflected, "Hearing her story made me realize how much I take for granted. Now I want to make sure I'm helping others feel seen and valued." In South Africa, a university hosted a conference titled Kindness as a Catalyst for Change. Academics, activists, and students gathered to discuss the societal impact of Clara's story and brainstorm ways to create lasting change. Clara herself was humbled by the outpouring of support and the movement her story had inspired. "I never thought my journey would mean so much to so many people," she said in an interview, "but I'm glad it's helping others see the importance of kindness." Her humility was matched by Anthony's determination to ensure her legacy endured. The Alma Foundation continued to expand its reach, funding programs for underserved communities and creating scholarships for students from marginalized backgrounds. One of the most touching tributes came from Emma Lynn, the young woman who had helped Clara on the flight. Emma, now a volunteer ambassador for the Alma Foundation, often shared her experience with Clara in speeches and workshops. "Helping Clara wasn't a big deal to me at the time," Emma said during a foundation event. "But seeing what it has led to, I realize how powerful even the smallest acts of kindness can be." Today, Clara's story lives on as a symbol of hope and change. Her experience reminds us that the power to transform the world doesn't always come from grand gestures. It often begins with a simple decision to care. From policy reforms to personal transformations, the ripple effects of Clara's story continue to grow. In airports, classrooms, boardrooms, and communities worldwide, her legacy serves as a beacon, urging people to choose kindness over indifference. Clara Williams may have been just one person, but her resilience and the compassion she inspired have left an indelible mark on the world, proving that even the smallest act of kindness can create waves of change. The world seemed to slow as news of Clara Williams's passing spread. To her son Anthony and the countless lives she had touched, her departure felt like a profound loss. Yet, amidst the sorrow, there was also a quiet sense of purpose, a determination to carry forward the legacy of kindness, resilience, and dignity that defined her life. For Anthony, Clara had been more than a mother. She was his guiding star, his constant source of inspiration. Her strength and sacrifices had laid the foundation for his success, and her lessons had shaped his character. As he stood in her quiet home after her passing, surrounded by the echoes of a lifetime of memories, Anthony vowed that her story would not fade. Clara's memorial service, held at the church she had attended for decades, was a gathering of family, friends, and strangers bound by the impact of her life. The small church was filled to capacity, with many standing outside to pay their respects. The pews were lined with people whose lives Clara had touched, from the students she had taught as a young teacher to community members she had helped in her later years. Among them were passengers from that fateful flight, including Emma Lynn, who had been with Clara during one of her most vulnerable moments. Emma sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes filled with tears. Nearby was Jack, a retired veteran who had been inspired by Clara's courage and determination. At the front of the church stood a photograph of Clara, her smile warm and gentle. Beside it was the silk scarf she had so lovingly embroidered for her granddaughter, Lily, a symbol of her unwavering love and creativity. The altar was adorned with white lilies and yellow daffodils, flowers Clara had always loved, their delicate beauty a reminder of the kindness she embodied. Anthony stood before the crowd, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "My mother was a woman of quiet strength," he began, his eyes scanning the room. "She faced life's challenges with grace and taught me that even when the world feels unkind, we must never lose our humanity." He paused, drawing a deep breath. Her story began with sacrifice and love. It continued with resilience and courage. And it ends here, not as a conclusion, but as the beginning of a movement, her legacy, carried by all of us. Anthony unfolded a letter Clara had written before her passing. Her words, spoken through him, filled the room with a profound stillness. After introduction, our conversation turned to the meat at the heart of the meal. "To those I leave behind, remember this. Life is not measured by what you own, but by how you treat others. Even the smallest act of kindness can change a life. Be patient, be compassionate, and never underestimate the power of love to transform the world." The congregation sat in silence, many wiping away tears. For Emma, Clara's words brought back memories of their brief but powerful connection. She wasn't just an inspiration, Emma reflected later. She was a reminder that we all have the power to make someone's journey easier, even in the smallest ways. Jack, the veteran, nodded solemnly as he listened. "She lived the kind of life we should all strive for," he said quietly. "Her courage didn't just change her circumstances, it's changing the world." Clara's passing marked the beginning of an even greater push to honor her legacy. The Alma Foundation, established in her name, had already begun to transform lives. Anthony continued his work with renewed fervor, ensuring that every initiative reflected the values his mother had instilled in him. The foundation expanded its reach, launching programs to support elderly travelers, combat discrimination, and promote empathy education in schools. In airports worldwide, Clara's Corners were established designated areas where travelers in need of assistance could find support and care. The Be Like Clara campaign gained even more momentum, inspiring millions to perform acts of kindness in her honor. From helping neighbors to advocating for systemic change, people from all walks of life embraced Clara's message. At the heart of it all was Anthony, who often spoke publicly about his mother's journey and the impact she had on him in the world. "My mother showed me that strength isn't about power, it's about compassion," he said at a global conference. "And through her, I've learned that change begins with us, one act at a time." Clara's story transcended her own life, becoming a symbol of hope and change. Schools taught her lessons, corporations adopted her values, and communities came together in her name. Her life became a rallying cry for those who had felt unseen or unheard, a reminder that even in the face of indifference, kindness could prevail. At her memorial service, Anthony announced the creation of the Clara Williams Scholarship Fund, dedicated to supporting students from underprivileged backgrounds who aspired to become teachers, just as his mother had. The first recipient, a young woman from Clara's hometown, tearfully expressed her gratitude. "I never thought someone like me could achieve this," she said, "but because of Clara, I believe I can." Months later, a statue of Clara was unveiled at the newly renovated Montgomery International Airport. It depicted her standing with quiet dignity, a suitcase in one hand and a book in the other, a testament to her resilience and love for education. The inscription read, "Clara Williams, a life of quiet strength that changed the world." At the unveiling ceremony, Anthony stood before a crowd that included people from all corners of the globe. He placed a hand on the statue, his heart swelling with pride. "You always told me," he said softly, "that one person couldn't change the world. But you did, Mom. You did." The statue became a symbol not just of Clara's journey, but of the collective strength and kindness she inspired. Travelers paused to read her story, many leaving with a renewed commitment to treat others with compassion. Though Clara was no longer physically present, her spirit lived on in the lives she touched and the movement she inspired. Her story became a reminder that change begins with the smallest acts: a kind word, a helping hand, a moment of patience. And as Anthony carried her legacy forward, he knew that his mother's impact would endure, lighting the way for generations to come. Clara Williams's story is a testament to the profound impact that small acts of kindness can have on the world. From her humble beginnings to her final days, Clara embodied the quiet strength and compassion that inspire change. Her resilience in the face of adversity, her unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity, and the kindness extended to her by a stranger, Emma Lynn, sparked a movement that continues to ripple across the globe. Clara's journey reminds us of a powerful truth. Kindness is not just a virtue, it is a force for transformation. It transcends barriers of age, race, and culture, connecting us in ways that remind us of our shared humanity. Her story started on a flight, with a moment of indifference countered by an act of compassion, and grew into a global movement that challenged the way we treat one another. Today we face a choice. Every interaction we have is an opportunity to carry Clara's legacy forward, whether it's helping a neighbor, showing patience to someone in need, or simply offering a kind word. These small gestures can create waves of change, just as Emma's act of kindness did for Clara. The message of the Alma Foundation, established in Clara's honor, is clear. Kindness is powerful. It has the ability to heal wounds, build bridges, and inspire transformation. Through its initiatives, the Foundation continues to promote empathy, equity, and respect, ensuring that Clara's legacy lives on in meaningful and impactful ways. But the work doesn't stop there. It begins with each of us. Clara's story challenges us to ask ourselves, how can I make someone's journey easier today? The answer doesn't require grand gestures or extraordinary effort. It's in the small, everyday moments where compassion takes root and grows. Imagine a world where kindness is the norm, where people pause to help instead of turning away, where every individual feels valued and respected. That world starts with you. We encourage you to reflect on Clara's story and take action in your own life. Here are a few simple ways to honor her legacy. 1. Practice empathy. Take a moment to consider what someone else might be going through. 2. Offer help when needed. Whether it's a physical task or emotional support, small acts make a difference. 3. Spread the message. Share Clara's story and inspire others to embrace kindness. 4. Get involved. Support organizations like the Alma Foundation that are working to create a kinder, more inclusive world. Clara believed that even the smallest act of kindness could spark monumental change. Let her story remind us that we all have the power to make a difference. As you go about your day, carry Clara's message with you. Kindness has the power to change the world. Now, it's your turn. How will you honor her legacy? Let's build a future that Clara would be proud of, one small act at a time.